Hello, my friends. This is Rick, and welcome to your seat at the table. And we are looking at yet another PDF. This is the classical Battletech historical Bush Wars, and from FanPro or WizKids or WK, or whichever you want to go by what's listed down here on the bottom. Like I said, I have it set up so when I put it on my bookshelf, it'll be something I could easily look at. I just started to touch on this the other day because I just recently got this and then took it and got it printed out at work. First off, I want to thank Swen for pointing out the book to me, that the book even existed. I tried to go find a hard copy version, and the only one I could find available and it came up on eBay, and they wanted like $130 for it or something, and I'm like, no. And so fortunately, Catalyst did have the PDF version available, and it cost me a whopping $18 damn for an old PDF. That's great for Catalyst. It's a great way for them to generate some additional funds. Great for us who don't own these and want to get access to them. That's a great thing. Somebody else mentioned in one of my comments that there's other reputable websites that have lots of PDFs available for older books. That's true, but there's still a lot of older books from FASTA days that there are not PDFs of because it wasn't a thing during that era. And if there are PDFs of them since then, it's because somebody got the book, took it apart and scanned it and created a PDF, which, hey, that's great if you can find those. Those are kind of like bootleg copies. They're not really official, although I can make the argument anything from FASTA or FanPro. I'm going to give it, no offense, Catalyst, don't give a damn if you think you own the rights to it. It's old enough. Be grateful people are still wanting it, still finding interest in it. It has value to people, usually not for monetary reasons, but for people like myself and others. Excuse me a second. Oh, I've been rambling on and done a number of videos this morning, and my voice is coming and going mostly because it's a little bit of Coca-Cola going on, even though I'm not supposed to drink it. Got a deal on 2 liter yesterday. So anyway, the thing with Bush Wars, this is I did a video for the War of 3039, and I commented that there was some error prior to it, the Ronin War, that led up to, or the fallout from the War of 3039, not the lead up, but the follow, after follow, that I really kind of wanted to look into, and I didn't know if there was any official source material. And Swin had said, "Hey, look at this book, we'll go for it," and I did. And I have not had a chance to read through all of it because, in part, I'm quite familiar with the three minor or lesser wars that are listed here, but it's an apt book, and one of the things that it stands out in my mind, of course, is the concept of Bush War. The Inner Sphere is a hot mess of conflict in any era, even in the supposed stretches of peace when there's detente between the major houses. There's no overt, actual large-scale combat. Raids, counter raids, probes, reconnaissance, bickering. Non-stop. At no point in the history of Battletech's humanity has there not been conflict someplace, somewhere, and at some level, whether it be local between people on a specific world and their liege lords, or corporations, and etc., etc., etc. The conflict is endless. That's one of the draws for Battletech. So it makes it such a great sandbox to play in, and this goes hand in hand in that. So when we talk about, they break this down into the Andurien War, and if I'm not pronouncing Andrea properly, well, I'm sorry, but guess what? Anton Marik's Revolt, the Andurien Wars, and the Ronin War. So they're covering 3 major minor conflicts. Major, minor, right? So in the case of the Anton Marik's Revolt, what in my mind, like I said, that is well established as lore, part of the Wolfdrag Gims canon in many aspects. It also gives us a really good view of the internal conflicts of major houses. The ruling families often feud, or absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's always somebody who feels I should be the ruler, I should be the first prince, I should be the archon, I should be the coordinator, and not him. And my uncle's is a tyrant, or my uncle's or my aunt is weak, etc., 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 etc. There's always somebody who's thinking that they should be in charge, and even though they're patently proved that they shouldn't be. The other thing is it shows like the Anton the Anton Marik's Revolt, or the Free Worlds League Civil War of the 3025 era, gives a great example, or 3020 era, that gives a great view into internal politics and revision. And this is nonstop. Even in the current modern era of Battletech, we see that all the time. There's a brewing conflict within the House Krita. Even though the height of their success, Krita has Free World Leagues on it, or the Federated Sons on their knees for the second time in history, and we are hearing that there's a growing dissent within the House. We know that the Marik the Free Worlds League are being ruled by, quote, pseudo-Mariks who are not really Mariks, that they're just Mariks in name only, and that there's some division within them. Within the Commonwealth, for example, House Steiner has always had issues because, once again, House Steiner is actually, of all the houses, the most nobility-based, the most classical nobility system based, and in part, so that means that there are a number of smaller noble chunks. So the greater house it rules over a collage of smaller nation states or smaller houses. And so when we look at the Sky Rebellion, the Tamar issues, Ark Royal, all this stuff leads through that endless scenario. And the Federated Sons, there's three major minor houses. If I look at it, look at the Sandovals, you look at the Hassocks, and you look at the Davions, but within each of those three major minor houses, there are endless numbers. There's hundreds of smaller houses that each, the Game of Thrones in space is a great apt thing with big stompy robots. So the history of Anton Marik's Revolt is important, but it's a really good as a lesson. Another thing would be the Andurien Wars, which I find the Andria has always been this puzzle to me. At no point in their history has Andria's ruling family not wanted to be independent from the Free Worlds League. My understanding from the lore is the only reason they kind of got browbeated into joining the Free Worlds League, but they also needed that mutual protection. And yet, over and over again, they break away, they succeed, they rebel, whatever, and then eventually they get their asses handed to them. They find themselves in situations beset by enemies too powerful for them to fight by themselves, and have to rejoin the Free Worlds League. Now, in the current rendition, or current epic, we've got them quote semi-independent with marriage ties to the Capella Confederation and the Magistracy at Canopus. At one point, there was this talk, theoretically speaking, of those three nations coming together: the Periphery Nation of the Magistracy, which is actually much more robust and as equally large as Andria and its houses and worlds, and together they not quite even come up to half the size of the Confederation. But the three together, if they were actually to get their ducks in a row and were to merge, they would become a very large, powerful nation, or house, a great house. The problem is that's never going to really happen. The Humphreys are never going to be satisfied with somebody else lording over them, ever. Even when they actually have to admit that they need that support, they don't condone it well. And there's always that simmering resentment underneath. They're always going to be untrustworthy or questionable in their loyalties. And the Magistracy's playing both sides at the same time. The Magistracy its moral and political social system is so alien to the Confederation and Andrea. The idea that in the long term that they could just somehow adapt and evolve into something else is pretty unlikely and unrealistic at best. And of course, the Confederation, the Liaos are damn well going to be the top dogs in any scenario. And in their mind, it's only proper that these smaller houses should take and bend a knee, even though they often manipulate things into that way. So when we look at the Andurien Wars, this is a never-ending litany of the inner sphere. This is a grand tristy on exactly how the inner sphere as a whole operates. Their history is example across the inner sphere, regardless of sorrow and emotional standards. It's just that is what it is. It's a great abject lesson into how and why the inner sphere operates in the fashion and the methods that it does. And if nothing else, that's what I would take away from it, in my personal opinion. So then, of course, that brings us down to the Ronin Wars. And the Ronin Wars, or the Ronin War, depending on how you want to talk about it or address it, is actually something a bit different in the history of the inner sphere. It's not that this hasn't happened before, but it is uniquely a Kurita thing, or uniquely a Draconis Combine and Japanese ancestry mindset, where the head of the house at the time, Takashi Kurita, along with his son Theodore, concocted a deal with brokered through Comstar to free Razzlehag, which was a major minor house of the Combine for its entire since its conception, and free them to be an independent minor house of their own, with the idea of creating a buffer state between them and the House Steiner, the Lion Confederation, or at this time the Fed Commonwealth, and put a significant buffer border from a large percentage of that section of the Draconis Combine proper. And this didn't sit well with the people who had been generationally ruling and leading this section of space as part of the Combine. And so they went Ronin, they went rogue, and they took it upon themselves to contest it. And at this point, of course, the warlord, their Karenni, Theodore, sent troops in to try to quell them and bring about order, while the nascent beginning workings of the Free Raga House Republic's military also combated them. It became a big ugly kind of scenario, and this crops up every now and then here and there across the inner sphere history, but in general, this is kind of a unique one to its own entity. And it set the bar for a number of things for that section of space, but at the overall big picture of the inner sphere, it had absolutely no effect. What I do take out of this is something this is not conjecture, this is actually based on some solid information that came out of Catalyst a while back from once again, one of them third-party sources, and I tend to believe the source I got it from, and he believes the source he got it from. So you take it out with the pound of mech lubricant that you need to utilize. The idea basically is Raggles was never meant to be an independent. They're always going to be the whooping boy of every and any great scenario. This is the facts of the hard way of the thing. Once they became members of the Draconis Combine, they were never going to regain their independence on their own, even though, for the most part, all through their history with the Combine, they have had their revolutionary elements. They've had their people within that are pushing for that. Their own version of freedom fighters and things like this. We see that all across the inner sphere. Some great houses have it more often than others, but this is the thorn that's always been in the side of the Cretans since its conception. So once they broke away and they had their freedom, it was very short-lived, because the clans showed up and dominated most of them. Now their big chunk of what's left of them is a member of the Ghost Bear Dominion. So once again, it's no longer a free Razzlehog at all. It's this agglomeration of Ragas the Hog and Intersphere Minds principles and beliefs and Ghost Bear and the clan ways. So take it for what you will. And we now know that there's a division between inside clan Ghost Bear that's starting to ratchet up and is going to, if not has already exploded, will explode. So that's my take on that. This is an awesome book, and like I said, I just got it printed out the other day, and I just started reading in on it, and I intend to read it completely. And at some point down the road, I actually want to tackle each individually and do a video on them to give us a little bit more insight and depth into what was going on, why Anton conducted his revolt, and the aftermath and the long-term effects that had on a number of entities, and the same with the Andurien Wars and the Ronin War, because it's worth going down those paths a few times. Anyway, thanks, Swin. I really appreciate the heads up on this, and I think it was worth the $18, and I expect to get some number of years worth of enjoyment out of it. And of course, like I said, this is a PDF printed out in my version of a book. Till next time, I'm going to give you my ending. Friends, this is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel worth checking out, right? Till next time.